Hi, I'm Jonathan Oxer and this is Walktime Blog number 28, Dead Tree Datasheets. On the Amp Hour podcast just recently, Dave and Chris were talking about the move towards using things like iPads for datasheets, so that when you're working on your electronics bench, you have an iPad or a tablet or an ebook reader or something nearby, and it gives you a searchable way to look through PDF datasheets. And you can have it right at the bench with you, so it's convenient. But they made the point that they both still find paper datasheets and books and things really useful, and I totally agree. One of the points that Dave made is that his computer is a few meters away from his primary workbench, so if he's sitting working at the bench, he can't necessarily easily just glance across and see the screen to look at pinouts and things. So he often prints stuff and then just takes the printout over to his workbench. I'll show you my physical arrangement here. That is my primary general purpose electronics bench. I've got a few other benches in the room, like there's one over there for specifically the surface mount, but this is where I do most of my work. My computer is right next to it, so I can have data sheets and things open on the screen and look across and it's right there. I find it really convenient having the computer next to the workbench because pretty much everything I do uses microcontrollers, so I can have an IDE open and a USB cable across onto the workbench and be mucking around with things. But anyway, this is about data sheets. The point is that even with my computer right there, I still print data sheets all the time, or certainly certain parts of them. Just over on the other side of the room, I have an A4 and A3 printer with duplex, which is awesome for printing out schematics. So you can print them out A3, which is huge, and makes them really easy to read. You can fit a lot on there, and because I happen to print a lot of stuff and then write notes, there's a recycling tub, and I've got a hole punch and stapler for reasons you'll see in a moment. And so what you'll find is that a lot of stuff that I print, like what you see at the top of the recycling tub there, is a land pattern. So there would have been some library part that I was just making within the last few hours or day or so, and I printed out the land pattern so that I could write notes on it, and you can see there are some calculations on there for offsets of things, and it's just so convenient having a hard copy of something like that while you're working on it. So what I often do is when I'm working on a project, I will print out part of the data sheet at least of whatever I'm working on and punch it and staple it, and then over time what happens is as I'm working on a project, I'll put those data sheets or parts of data sheets into a folder, which for something simple is usually just like a manila folder. For something more complex with a lot of stuff, it ends up in a binder like this. So this particular binder is for what I'm working on at the moment. This is in relation to ArduSat. And what I find is that having hard copies of certain parts of the data sheet all in one place compiled is really handy, because what it means is that maybe 6 months or 12 months down the track, I can grab this folder and know that I have everything in there in relation to what I was working on for that particular project. So obviously land patterns is an important one. There are some mechanical drawings. This is for the ArduSat physical layout. Some data sheets. I wouldn't print out a 300 or 400 page data sheet for a complete MCU, but I do quite often print out the short form summary data sheets, which might be 10 or 15 or 20 pages, which is enough to give you all the information you need, like pinouts and things, basic information when you're working. And there are some white papers. Oh yeah, this is an interesting one. I'll talk about this in the future thing, level shifting for I2C, which I'm using for node isolation in ArduSat. And the other place I have data sheets is on the computer itself. I have folders broken down, so I have a folder for connectors, one for CPU, one for crystals, and then inside that, like if I go into the CPU folder, I've got folders for families of MCUs and then data sheets in those, and all of this is stored on Dropbox. So this is like my central library, and that library is actually shared using Dropbox with Mark at Freetronics as well. So as we acquire data sheets, we can put them into our common library. And then I also have copies of data sheets in specific folders. So this is for the datasheet power supply module. I'm just accumulating data sheets. A lot of these will get thrown out, but as I'm going through trying to choose chips for a particular project, I might read through dozens of data sheets and put copies of them there, and then at the end of it I'll probably just delete a few or not keep them around. And typically I'll have, while I'm working on a design, I'll have the schematic on the central monitor, datasheet on the right, PCB layout on the left, but of course that doesn't matter so much while you're working on the schematic. And then when the schematic is all done and you're happy with the design, basically I swap these two. So I shove the schematic across to the left, I bring the PCB layout across to the center, and proceed with the layout. Oh, and the other thing that I use hard copies for, there's another reason that I like to print it out, is it's really useful when you're doing things like design reviews or transposing example schematics from app notes and things into the actual into your actual project. So in this particular case, and this is a reasonably simple example, this is a voltage regulator that I'm using in the datasheet power supply module, and as you can see I've got orange highlighter all over it. So what I do in that case is, as I'm using this as an initial circuit that I then integrate into the system, so that's for the in fact, that's what I've got on the screen right now, amazingly enough. So that is that circuit that I've got in there in Eagle is based on this this particular example. And as I was recreating the circuit in Eagle, I was just highlighting each of the nets and each of the parts. And then because some of these parts are quite specific in terms of their requirements, like the inductor has fairly specific requirements, as I made notes and verified all of the footprints, I marked those off as well. So the idea is that by the end of it, you'll have a hard copy which has got every single net and part marked off with a highlighter, and then you know your job is done. You've successfully captured it all. And I find that's really useful when doing design reviews as well. Print out the schematic for something, begin with a highlighter, examine every single net, make sure that everything does what you expect it to do. And as you go, you mark them off with a highlighter. When you get to the end, you shouldn't have any unexplained nets, and then you know you're done. So for that sort of thing, hard copy is awesome. And of course I like sticking hard copies of stuff up on the wall, just to glance at from time to time, like architecture diagrams and things. And what's on the wall will change depending on what project I happen to be working on at the time. Anyway, the point of all of this is, hard copy data sheets, there's really no substitute at this point. Eventually maybe we will have really cheap e-readers, and I'll be able to have an e-reader that's just like I use that clipboard there, and we'll be able to hand write notes on it and store it away. But at this point I really like the idea of having hard copies of things. I just find it so useful. It's a really cool way to work. So I'd be interested to hear how other people use whether you go totally electronic. Do you try not to print anything at all? Do you print reams and reams of stuff? How do you manage things like data sheets when you're working on projects? Let me know. See ya.